I'm not sure if I've got the most interesting topic working with Word. I thought this was an IT session when I heard of it first. And I suppose for me the Word document is the tool that we always tend to get stuck with when it comes to producing our whatever our output is, whatever that might be. So welcome. I wasn't really sure about the format. I'd spoken to Seamus about it. So I suppose I'm going to pitch it from my perspective, from being an undergrad to a postgrad, and my own journey with Word, and what it's like as an application in the preparation of documents and what that might be. And when we say long document, what do we actually mean by that? And I struggled this in my time in grad studies, trying to explain to postgrads what exactly are the specifics around this in an academic setting, and it does vary, so we'll get into a little bit of that. And then the requirements around Word, and there's lots of requirements, and we're just talking there about students not bringing biros or notebooks. And the one that sticks in my mind is students producing documents and not putting, for example, the page numbers on the document. They don't see it as even a requirement. So there's something missing in the mix, and I'm not sure if that everybody sees this or not. I suppose the format, and again, it's a suggested format. What we might look at are some of the fundamental mistakes that I've seen with students, and again, they might concur with you, or you may have another input. So please shout as we go along. Like any IT application, garbage in, garbage out. It's only as good as what you do with it. It's a tool, and sometimes it's used very badly, and sometimes it's used very well, but it will not do the document for you. Again, students, particularly research students, do have problems with Word. And there's some of the reasoning for that, and I kind of had a light bulb moment looking at this yesterday. First year, second, third year, we get particularly business students, and I'm only talking from that perspective. So, but we expect them to do continuous assessment in Word documents, say 1,500 words or 2,000 words, and then they jump to final year project level. We want 10,000 words, and we go to postgrad level, we want 60,000, and we go to and you go, okay, hang on a minute, the scale here has changed dramatically. And the technology works, or does it work while they're student? And we'll get into that, hopefully, as the session plows on. Okay. I remember Microsoft Word in its former heyday, WordStar, WordPerfect, you might recall it, and the old MS-DOS type products that were out there, and we all struggled, and I'm talking back to the 80s and 90s. Floppy disk territory, even cassette tapes. So that's my heritage, that's what I'm coming from. So I suppose I've come around it, and I'm now wondering why are our undergrads struggling with a basic Word document. I remember the code, and you're trying to type it into it. So we've come very far with the technology in my own view. As well as that, I suppose my own background as a postgrad researcher informs my own thinking around what Word documents should look like. And I'm not so sure that's the correct way, I don't know, I've only got what I see. But the reality is, all of us, regardless of our disciplines, there is an expectation that regardless of our specialism, there's some academic output required, and it's usually in the form of a document with specific requirements. So I think we're all on the same page in that need. Now, what the requirements are vary slightly, but Word is generally the go-to tool, and that's banging it out on the keyboard and producing something that is digested. Every discipline has a different requirement. And I suppose from my time in grad studies, you quickly realise that, for example, in art and design, what they see as a thesis document isn't what engineering see, or what business sees, or what science sees. And you're still going, oh, hang on a minute, so you're giving students different requirements now. Why is that? So an MA, a Master of Business, an MSc, an MEng can be anywhere between 20,000 and 60,000 words, whereas an FYP undergrad can be 10,000. And I know in social care it's less, I think it got changed. Whereas DBAs and PhDs can be 80 to 120,000. And I suppose the one that stands out for me in art, it could be 5,000, but the installation of an exhibit is the thesis. And I remember reviewing some of those with externs and speaking with Kieran Cashel, and after a day they take it all down. I go, what are you taking it down for? And they haven't even recorded it on video or photographed it, and it's gone. I'm not so sure that's wise, and it just seemed a waste. So we're playing with constantly moving sands, I think, in terms of what we want Word to do for us. Again, I'm coming at it from the business marketing specialism that I've come from, but also as a supervisor, with what my own postgrads and thesis students struggle with, and in my official roles here. So, and that's all I'm informing it by, but obviously there are other views on this, and there are other experiences. Off the bat, what do long documents and our students do together? What do they get out of it? Well, they struggle, I think, with Word. They struggle to type or to use a QWERTY keyboard. At a conversation recently before Christmas, we were watching students trying to put a document together, and we think they've gone the other way with the smartphones and the tablets. So they've jumped from the need to type to pressing and pushing. I'm not so sure if there's any credit in that. Most of them only get an initial introduction to Word in first year. They might have done some at Leaving Cert, but the actual requirement of a 3,000 or 1,500 word document is the first time for many of them, particularly in first year. Looking at a screen and looking at the blank page and going, well, what do I do now? And where do I go with it? When we issue them CA continuous assessment documents, for a lot of them that's the first time they've had requirements to meet. Top sheet, cover, do an essay on this, do a research piece on that, give me your opinion on. Okay. Within the business world, generally 1,000 to 3,000 words. Again, it changes by discipline, but that's what we're normally looking for tourism, event, hospitality, front office. Even social care would come in there. Sports students as well. That's the kind of document I'd be setting for them to look at. And obviously the group projects are a little more, individuals are a little less, and the weighting 10% and so on and so forth. But as they get to final year, the word requirements tend to increase. And I think that's the same across all the disciplines. We want more within that. Again, the students themselves, there are some underlying issues that I see to be fundamental. And these include spelling, page numbers, pagination, paragraph blocking, and so on, referencing that a lot of them don't get and struggle with. And even when they're laid out clearly, they struggle with, what do you mean times 12 times New Roman? Don't know what that is, you know. Pagination, what do you mean by that? Even down to not putting a top sheet on a document with their name and so on and so forth. There are worrying issues though as well in terms of grammar, preparation, spelling, sentence construction, vocabulary limits, and I'm not sure why that is. And again, I know we have students with literacy issues, learning issues and all of that, so they're there as well. But they're, so when you're setting the document, some of this is coming back to you, and you may not know what the reason is in some cases. Okay. The problem then is we get to, the long document, and for a lot of them, they only meet this in final year, where they're handed a thesis, or an FYP, or a business plan, or some animal of a larger constituent element that they must look at. And generally the credits increase as well, so the weighting and risk is higher. So they've gone from 5 credits to maybe 10, or in the case of tourism, so it's 20 credits, it's now 15, and I know with social care it has changed as well and it's come back. I just thought as I wrote this, it's ironic that undergrads have 3 years of smaller documents exposure, and then we require them to jump to the next level in 4th year. And I go, how did that happen? And I don't know why we've done that. So if you look at the learning curve, you go, hang on a minute, that's a big game step change. From maybe 3,000 or 4,000 words to 20 or 10. And then the postgrads, we stress and cause them more anxiety as well by saying you need a larger document as well. So I just thought, hang on a minute, that like you wouldn't do it to a child. You've now learned to crawl, now run a marathon next week.
Are you suggesting that maybe in first year 1,500, in second year 3,000, in third year 5,000?
Well, I think it's worth a conversation around, like we go through programmatic review and we specify the credits and we talk about the outputs and the learning deliverables, but we never actually said what exactly do we want, 1,000 words or 3? We've left it up to the individual nuance of the lecturer. So you can have students with a portfolio of assessments ranging in length. And the only commonalities in 4th year where we generally agree what a thesis is or an FYP, and I just think it's a big, it's a big jump, isn't it? Rationally, if you look at it mathematically, and we go, yeah, okay, get on with it. So as I had spoken to you about long documents, and I thought, well, what is a long document? And that's what we're into. So postgrads then and long documents. Well, thesis production then is what I see as the the nirvana of Word document proliferation. That's the best way I could describe it. You have arrived. You're at the top of your league. You now must produce this behemoth. Go. See you in 2 years. Good luck and thanks. And where do we go now? And to I suppose to expect somebody to produce, for most taught masters, 20,000 is in or around the ball game, or 60,000 for a research masters. Like, they're not insignificant pieces of work. With some kind of a production of research questions, findings, conclusions, recommendations. And if you go for the AAA doctoral thesis, you're heading up to the 100k, 120,000 annual. Now, depending on the discipline. So again, I'm just speaking from the management business side. It's a lot of document, it's a lot of paper, and there are books written on how to attack all these and do these. And
I'm surprised that the MA is 60,000.
It can be, yeah.
The history MA, which you would have thought was more heavy on the literary aspect, is
could be more.
Would take 20.
Yeah.
It would take 20,000 for MA in history.
Yeah. So each discipline is varied on what its requirements are. So my discipline of long and yours can vary, like 20. Like, there's a big difference there.
PhD is the same, but the
and equally, again, if I go back to the art example, it might only have 10,000 or 15,000 for the doctor, but it's the installation and exhibition work or sculpture work that counts. So we're not measuring like with like,
60,000 seems very long to me for a master's level 9. It's quite incredible.
Yeah, well, the research ones would. Yeah, research only.
Still very long.
Yeah.
If you do a doctorate, your thesis is really only 50,000 words at the end of it all.
Yeah. Well, what I should say,
not in all cases.
No.
Yeah, not in all cases. The jury is out on what, like, they're not standardised. They're definitely not standardised. And there's definitely no one best way, and each college seems to have separate requirements. And that's part of the problem, I think.
I was just surprised that the business is so bigger, much bigger than the history or English.
Yeah.
It's all right.
It's a lot more writing.
There's a lot more elements to it. Now, there are no hard and fast rules with this, because you go to a different university and it can drop by 10,000 or like so.
What we would have there would come in a little bit, as in between those would be placement reports in years 2 and 3 that would have a few different sections that could amount to maybe about 7,000-8,000 words.
Bring up the word count quite easily, yeah, absolutely. And if you think about it, like our sports FYPs in Irish are we cap it at 10,000, and that's simply to stop them meandering. And I'll get to that in a minute. And 60,000 allows a lot of meandering, and so does 100. And it's amazing, and again, I keep going back to art, but if you see an art extern looking at a piece of work, they know instantly if it's at that level, and there's no document, there's a minimum, and it's fabulous to see, like, and you go, how did that happen? Whereas in business, we're trudging through the literature, we're trudging through the journals, and we're blah, 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 blah. And I'm sure history and all the rest are the same, Okay, so guess what? The Word package won't write or produce the thesis. That much I've realised.
I wish.
There's the secret out, okay? It won't do it on its own. That's my little piece of gem knowledge today for you. The biggest difficulty in my own experience is actually getting it started, no matter what size you're looking at. 5,000, where do you start? How do you start, okay? For students pursuing them, there are prescribed parameters, so depending on which institute you're playing with, you got to go check the regulations, because it varies dramatically. And again, we run away from the regulations, particularly postgrad regulations, but they're actually designed to assist the students. And even with FYP students, we're now into March, and they're coming, what font do I need to use? What page spacing? And it's in the guideline documents, I think, but they don't read them. Majority of them don't read them. Again, for students, the onus is on them to inform themselves. We know they don't. But the onus is always on them to do it. Now, this is tied into the student-supervisor relationship and whether they're constantly meeting and so on and so forth. But again, the advice is check the college regs. Again, you don't want to produce a 60,000 master's thesis if the regs say 20,000 will do, and it happens. Even down to the font size, the spacing, the cover sheets. It's all there. Now, it's buried away in the regs, but it is there. And again, the amount of times I've got documents back and it's not stapled. He says, "Why didn't you staple it?" I didn't know I had to staple it. Why didn't it? It's on the the requirement. And these are simple. And this is just it's a care to detail element, I would imagine, with you. And you find they're doing the same stuff for all their subjects, not just, Survival tips. Do I have any? Write as you go, as soon as you can. And that's often the hardest step, isn't it? To start, to begin, to put something on the page. You may not know where it'll end, and you're not supposed to. And then documenting and recording it all in Word, and that's all Word does. It doesn't matter, it could be the alphabet you're typing, it won't matter. But to get the writing started somehow, somewhere, to try and get it to look real on a page and get it out of your head, and get it there. I suppose the other big tip, the thesis production, it's not sequential and orderly. For me, it's always been a spider's web. I don't know which bit fits where, and then eventually I will see it, but generally it's not. There's no, you're thinking you've the literature done, you're onto the primary research maybe, and then you think, oh, there's another piece of literature, I see the link now with that piece of literature, I better go back. But you don't see that till you're putting the cover page on. Or you're playing with your stats or whatever you're playing with, and you go, oh, I never asked that question, why didn't I? So there's no order, and I suppose that's the quest then, isn't it? That's the difficulty with the larger documents. Once you kind of go north of 20,000, you're into that struggling with, well, what do I do with it? And where's the order within that? At some stage you have to stop the reading and synthesize and condense. And therein lies the vulnerability of the system, because now there's a limit on what you can put in. It's easy copy and paste 20, 30 journals. What do they mean though? What? And that's the learning bit, that's the higher order bit, isn't it? You will have to start writing. That 20,000 words, 30, you're going to have to put some miles on the clock and get to it. You will have to codify, synthesize, and the word logicize. What does it all mean? And that's what the document allows you to do with Word. And you can navel gaze and ponder and predicate and blow smoke and do whatever it is you do while you read. But what does it mean in a logical, sequential fashion? And there's no other tool out there that allows us to do that, other than the written word that I'm aware of anyway. You then, as the student, the undergraduate, you're telling the story to the reader, and it's not telling you. And I had a supervisor who used to say that to me. It is a thread of a story you're trying to tell. So whether it's modern art, whether it's World War II history you're looking at, whether it's the economic practices of SMEs, what is it you're trying to tell? And that focuses you then to order it, if you like. And the FYP, the thesis, the PhD, it does force you to put structure on your thinking, your logic, your arguments, your findings, your conclusions, and that's all Word allows you to do. It doesn't matter what they are though, but it does make you do that. And I suppose that's why colleges have come up with the caps on the word counts. And we've all done the rambling document and the spider's web, and we can all pontificate, and it's very easy to do when you have the time. But the thesis is about that. It's asking you to make the question, say the research question, come up with the findings. And that is difficult, that's not easy. And it's certainly the 99% perspiration and the 1% inspiration, the bathroom moment, eureka, that's what it meant. Okay. Some other tips. Hardest thing I see students struggle with, structure. Structure with, and particularly with long documents. Once we go north of 10,000 words, it's not a rambling essay, And even for undergrads, you say to them, I don't want the honours English Leaving Cert novel about the day in the life of your dog and the beach holiday. I want a structure. You can give me paragraphs, bullet points. You get the thesis mode then, and you're looking for them to use the structure as a navigational aid. So tell the reader, what are you doing in this piece of work? What are you doing? And you do wander through the topic, absolutely. And again, I suppose that if you like your topic, it's so easy to go down the cul-de-sacs. And what's over here? Okay. And particularly with the proliferation of Adobe files, PDFs, online journals, data, it's never been easier. The days of pulling them out of boxes and looking for interlibrary loans are gone. It's all at the touch of a keyboard. So you can fill 20,000 words quite easily without even trying, and it'll even do the references for you. You know, but where's the structure? Where's the order thinking? And if you look at the requirements for the, you know, the level 8, and they were the old HETEC, HEGA, you know, it's a mastery, or it's an understanding of the topic, a kind of level 8. Level 9 is a mastery and an understanding, but the level 10 then is the critical thinking and the new knowledge, and that's the gem then, isn't it? That's the diamond. Then what is the new knowledge, the contribution to the knowledge in any field? I suppose the structure then as well, by forcing the student to think about it, the structure, you're stopping the drifting. Okay, Mark. And you know, you can see that in long documents where you can drift aimlessly into unrelated areas. And the problem is, as a writer, you're too close to the woods. You don't see, that doesn't link with that other section. Why am I looking at this piece of theory? It's not even in my research question, but it's nice, I've put it in there. Oh, what does it mean? And the structure makes you focus then as well, you know, tied into that. Again, the structure in the document gives you order and what I've called systematic chronology. And by that I mean that the student has initiated, in the case of a research topic, an area of literature that has devolved into research questions, that has devolved into a methodology, some kind of questionnaire or piece of work that challenges or elaborates on those questions. And then there's a synthesis of the findings and conclusions. And I suppose a bit like an orchestra, a beginning, a middle and an end. And that's, in my mind, that's where it should be going. And that has to be for us, I suppose, in the academic world, chapters, sections, volumes. There isn't another template out there that we can follow. Even the art students must produce a written component of what it all means and where it's at. But the order, I suppose, in the systematic chronology tells the story of the work that the student has done. I suppose the documents themselves with the structure forces you to stop, okay, and make conclusions. So FYP students say to us, well, how many words should I have in my literature? And you look at the marking scheme and you say, well, literature is worth about 15%, so between 1,500 and 2,000 words out of 10,000. If you go beyond that, you've invested too much time in the literature. So the structure makes them slow down and see, and the same with masters and PhD. And again, you can break it into sections, and off the top of my head, a master's for business should have 2 to 3 literature chapters at most. It shouldn't need any more. History would be different and art would be different. But it must get to the conclusions and the recommendations and the findings section somewhere. And that's the so what moment. So what has the 20,000 words or the 30 or 50,000 words delivered? What have you found? Yes, you're talking about Einstein's theory. What have you done? Then, I suppose finally the structure makes you commit to delivery of your thesis, because without it, it ain't going to get done. It's not going to happen. You can write it up all you like, but unless you structure it into the long document, it's not going to happen. You can't submit without it. So then the regulations come back into play, and it must have this, this and this, or else we won't accept it as submission. Now bear in mind that a lot of particularly masters and PhD thesis submission is done in conjunction with either an installation or piece of artwork or a viva voce, or some kind of modelling or scientific experiment. So they're working hand in hand. Whereas for business and humanities students, there isn't that element of presentationism, but the viva voce would be there as well, as part of that. And finally again, it is just a tool. That's all Word is, to help get the thoughts out of your head, when you're trying to use it well, because those thoughts can be dangerous, and they can be, blurs and fog and lack of clarity and consternation and frustration, and that's the thinking and research process, isn't it? That's the inquiring knowledge. That's what you're scratching at, and you're challenging the student to question. Why did so and so write this? What does it mean to your piece of work? Maybe it's complete contradiction to your piece of work, but that's okay. And I suppose
this is where they begin to panic, isn't it? A lot of the time they're thinking, I'm not reading this and it's totally against what I read yesterday. Sometimes you're thinking, this is good.
Yeah, and what often happens is
they want to give up at that stage.
They give up. They do the research and they get the findings back and they go, oh right, what does it mean now? I don't know. And that's the void. You're looking into the press, because it's easy to read the journals, which are comforting and more, and so has written, but now you've written something else and you found something else, so what does that mean? And we all suffer from that, because that's the fear factor, isn't it? My work isn't as good as, or my work has limitations, or my work isn't the same as, or I found something that I didn't want to find, or I didn't know I found, and now I found it,
Yeah.
you know?
To accommodate it.
Yeah, or guess what, the study I've done is actually better than the one that was done 20 years ago, and I now have to challenge it, and I have to put it out there and put my name in it and say I disagree with Schweinsteiger's whatever goal making strategy from 2010 or whatever it might be. Again, before you submit stuff, read it, reread it, read it, reread it, and keep it, because you'll find something every time, and you become automated to the process of submitting stuff every time. Whether that's your boss or your supervisor or your editor or whatever. I suppose postgrads particularly don't get that as supervisors we're not school teachers, we're not correcting the grammar, and you know, I'll do it once maybe and then I'm done, I won't redo it, that's it. And if you see the same mistakes, the editing, the pagination, like it becomes unprofessional after a while, and they're not learning, you know, to polish the document or bring it up. You know, it shouldn't be the same. Recalibrate the wheel. Groundhog Day. You know, and even down to mistaken references, wrong fonts, and you see that in group work a lot, where you know the four guys have come together and nobody has played editor. You know, and they're handing in 6,000 words, and they're in 4 different fonts and different paginations, and the pizza stains are on it and the beer stains are on it, and you know, that's just staff.
No time allowed in the process for
No time allowed.
proofreading, like, it's
Yeah,
just-
and they don't count that,
Yeah.
you know. And I say to them, what date is that due? It's due in 6 weeks' time. When it's at week 5, should be the paging day, stapling day. Week 4 should be the editing, the proof, the quality, and work. But they don't do that, you know. And it's the same with the thesis submission. You know when your next supervisor's meeting is. You know, in theory we'd all like to work back and be organised, and you know, and so on. I suppose it helps with even any of those documents, breaking them into sections from the very beginning, you know, because your regulations will have laid out reference section, table of content, literature, methodology, you know, and even to put them on the table blank, you can begin to visualize the size of the elephant, you know, and often that void is the hard problem. You know, you're starting at 1 page, and if you're looking at 60,000, you're looking at another 90 pages, 100 pages. How do I get there?
The thing is, isn't it, like for undergraduates and maybe masters as well, is to open a document that has the sections that are predictable sections. You know, you
And
have
the
your-
amount of them that don't do that.
You have your context, you have your
Yeah.
literature review, you have your methodology, you have your findings, you have
Yeah.
your discussion, you have your, and that as they go, there can be thought processes that can feed into any one of those, and just to lodge in stuff.
Yeah, and they struggle with that, you know.
You know, they do, yeah. It's kind of like I can't start writing until I have it all.
Yeah, and then I can, they don't realise it's a journey.
It's a whole drafting process.
Yeah, and even something like, you know, the methodology section, you know, whether it's phenomenology or yin or whatever, like that's been around forever, and we've all digested that and tried to make sense of it and struggled with it. And they don't see that, they don't have to reinvent that, they just need to go immerse themselves in it, understand it, transcribe what they need and move on, and then try and relate their methodology to that piece of work. Yeah, and that's the issue itself, isn't it?
And some get stuck on methodology, you know,
Absolutely.
far too much.
Yeah, and they're wondering about the science of the knowledge rather than just getting on with it. Yeah, and they do struggle with that. And are they going quantitative or qualitative, and where will they go? And then they get lost, or they've looked at all the quantitative, deductive studies and they haven't looked. And again, that's something that you try to pick up as you go along. I suppose other gems, multiple copies electronically, make them, email them, put them on the cloud. It happens as all, they get lost. Particularly sections, and particularly if you're submitting multiple drafts. Which draft dated? Which one is it? I don't know. In fact, I've lost it. Can't remember. And when you have annotations or changes from your supervisor, you know, keep that stuff, you know. Again, timing your submission deadlines, you'll know at the start of engaging on it when graduation is likely to be, and this is real forward planning now and none of us do it, but you know when it is, and ideally you'd work back, but it's very hard to be that mechanical, we know that, because stuff happens while you're doing particularly the masters and research stuff, you know, you get married, people die, you get dogs, you have children, and on it goes, you change them, particularly if you're a part-time postgrad student, it's even harder again. You know. Finding a good proofreader, very hard to find, but if you've got one, use them. you know, because you can't see the wood for the trees, particularly with the real long documents. Once you go again into master's level, that is a big issue, like, because you're looking and you know the material so well, you miss stuff, you don't see it, and it becomes a blur.
And you're skim reading at that stage because you feel so familiar.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, most, particularly the business journals, they all run in the same recipe, and I'm sure the you know, the social care centre, they're all run in the same format. You get an abstract, you get introduction, you get literature, and it's all done. So they're all processed. So you miss stuff, and that's often the eureka moment you're looking for. And particularly when you make the link between Hines and Murphy and you go, I see it now, but I didn't see that before. You know, and sometimes it helps if you condense those down to, you know, the spider's web of 3 or 4 thoughts, and put like thought with like thought, and that's the hard bit. To see the thought, the chain of thoughts in the field of literature that's out there, you know. And there's a lot of sludge and storage material there that you're wading through. You know. And that's it. Thank you. Questions? That's my overview of Word.
Just something that you said earlier on, Derek, about not knowing if somebody has dyslexia or some kind of learning disability. I'm just thinking, in UL, for example, there's it's set up that, you know, if you have dyslexia, you have to notify. You're assessed, and you would have been assessed perhaps even before you go to 3rd level, and you can get an assessment if you hadn't one already. And outside of that, then you don't have dyslexia, and you don't have, you know, whatever the learning disability is, and therefore you're just treated as
another.
Yes.
Yeah, and again we'd have a similar system inside, and it would be here as well, either through the counselling service or students' union. But you do have students that have undiagnosed or unknown issues, and I'm not talking. And they don't even have to have a validated and notified condition, but maybe their general literature is just poor, their vocabulary is poor, and if you look at, you know, they may have done honours English, they may not. I see it with business, particularly with our sports students. They haven't done any economics, for example. So there's a deficiency there, even in the fundamental knowledge in some topics. So you're asking them then to produce a document, and that base work isn't there. So you're trying to be cognizant of that as well. That, you know, they don't have that in the arsenal to begin to write the document or attempt to document. And equally then they may not have done the background reading that you prescribed. So they're then trying to produce a document on even a shakier basis, you know.
And it's the syntax, it's the sentence structure for some reason. They're not writers themselves, you know, not used to read, you know, to calibrating stuff and to...
Yeah, and this is it, isn't it? Like I struggle with that kind of long document writing, and you're crafting it. So that's the craft. So you're trying to put what's in your head into a digestible form. So you're now dealing with students that are smartphone savvy, tech savvy, Facebook, Messenger, how's it going, what's going on, tweeting, or on YouTube, you know, and there's a huge entertainment value. And now you're asking them to produce 20,000 with no entertainment value. You know.
I think the crafting of it is the thing. I mean, a lot of them, even in their FYPs, they start doing it a few weeks before it's due to be submitted. They start writing it. And I keep telling them, you know, I always tell them, you know, my son's a bit vulgar, but I say, you know, get the vomit out first before you get the good stuff out. So that, you know, just throw anything that goes through your mind on the page and then work from that. You know?
Yeah, they don't see it as a distillation process. You know, they see it as multiple, like particularly FYPs, and I say that to our fortures. Look, you haven't done a project like this before, you're now on your own, you drive it, you're in charge, you're piloting it, and they go, yeah, whatever. And then 6 weeks before they go, oh yeah, I've got to land this now.
Yes, absolutely.
Where do I start?
But I think the tool itself, I mean, Microsoft Word, can be really useful, you know, because, I mean, if you learn some of the skills that it, you know, how to do a table of content, how to use your headings, and use your table of content to keep you on track, you know, kind of keep pulling it, keep, you know, kind of your format as well as you can keep it. Because I remember there was a chap here doing his masters, and it was the last week, I tried to get the page numbers in, and you know the way you've got to do V1 for the first pages, and that was cracking them up, you know, kind of. So
that's the structure.
It's the actual learning, the skill to use Microsoft to your own advantage.
Absolutely. And they don't get that you can't grade it or you can't manage that unless they follow the ground rules around table of contents, page numbers, you know, and they don't see
But you
that.
see people writing them in manually.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Whereas in actual fact, the tool itself
allows you
can
to-
actually help you
Yeah.
create a lovely document.
That's what I meant with the technology.
Yeah,
like there's loads of
absolutely.
assistance there,
Mm.
and we run the library skills workshops, and we run but they don't go.
I suppose this is the fundamental issue. I mean, my postgrads that I'm supervising at the moment, like, one of them is a very technical guy, but he's trying to write up his thesis at the moment,
Yeah.
and a huge struggle in terms of it's the two things. He can't compose and write, and he's using Word against himself. So, and we have this issue in that there's a huge amount of resources now, like online.
Yeah.
Like YouTube has everything that you need to know.
Yeah,
You know. So in fact, the library sessions, they're really good,
Fantastic.
but in a way, they're not even needed because everything is all around them. Lynda.com, YouTube, everything. You can ask YouTube any question about how to do that.
Yeah.
How can I create a section
Content.
in Microsoft Word?
Yeah.
You have a 2-minute expert video on
How to do
YouTube.
it. And much better than any supervisor can show
Yeah.
you.
Because like what I know is what I've taught myself, and
I think that's all most of us do.
So whereas these are trained Microsoft people that are doing it,
Do it very well.
but they're not using them,
Yeah.
and they're not using the people in the library that know their stuff.
It's an
So
engagement question.
uh,
it's a huge issue.
And the tools that are there, like in terms of diagrams and charts, are fantastic as well.
Fabulous.
Compared with, even 20 years ago for
Yeah.
visualizing stuff, and for showing data, and for creating models. Or
Yeah. Even the newer SPSS, the stats software,
Yeah.
to generate the graphs for you, to generate like it's all there.
But
Whereas before
it
you used
maybe-
to do them manually.
It does
Yeah.
come back to a piece. I mean, there's a lot of underlying issues, as you pointed out, in terms of ability to construct sentences and grammar and vocabulary, etc. But
Yeah.
it does come back to that at the program board, faculty level, saying, okay, well, we're having a huge issue at the thesis point here, FYP piece. Can we solve the problem by doing some things further back down the line where we become more pedantic about the structure and the formatting and the pagination in year 1 and year 2? So we
You need to come to
I'm wondering, could these things be put down as, tasks, assignment for a tutorial assignment would be, you'd have maybe 6 different small assignments that by the end of the semester or whatever, you would be able to do X, Y, and Z on Word, and it's an assessment for you. You have to
But
do
in
this.
fairness, our own first years in Moylish, and I'm sure it's the same here, they do the IT modules, with the word processing, the Excel and the PowerPoint, and all those tasks are there. But what seems to have happened is particularly the tech-savvy students aren't going to those sessions because they feel they don't need to.
No, but I mean, if it's something that's graded
They should go.
as tasks.
Yeah.
Like even when a student, it's not the thing that we set them to do. I mean, if students submit an essay to me without page numbers, they're told this first day it's failed.
Yeah. And that's what it's
the
coming
idea
down
being
to.
that if you don't
Needs
pay
that
that
kind of-
attention to
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
what's
They do
inside?
need to fail it, They do need to see that.
But Seamus is right, it does need a whole team or faculty. We introduced a module now for the social science people there, first semester, on academic writing and research skills.
Okay.
And it's kind of all of that, plus citation and referencing and the
Sure.
basics of it. And so for semester 2, we were all kind of hopeful that now, they'd be up and running for the assignments. Actually, it's like some of them were never present for some. It's quite amazing. A small number have got it and they're really able to do the citation and the referencing, and some others just, it's like
Why is
technically
that?
at the time they kind of seemed like they understood it, but actually once that module is over and assessed, it's like there's something not
They're not
cumulative,
linking it to the other.
not cumulative. And it's like you're saying, you really have to then start penalising. Christ, come on, folks, we actually did this, Like we now you have to. But to me, like they get it technically, but to me there's a deeper issue about writing and writing skills. I think the sentence structure thing is really, some are really challenged now as writers. Maybe it's sometimes about the profile of the student as well that we have them coming in, but they get there by year 4, and sometimes the thesis though is the biggest jump, and you're right there, the biggest hurdle they've ever
Sure,
faced. because they're on their own and they might have got by the 1,500 word, 2,000 word
They can
assignments.
post.
But like to jump from that to 10,000 words
big
and
jump.
not to be able to write is a fluent thing. And usually, so they're paralysed by fear
Yeah.
before they even get going on it. You know, we've 2 or 3 at the moment now in 4th year, and they're really struggling. And really, like the question is whether they're level 8 candidates at all. And the thesis is the separating piece.
Yeah.
That they've been so supported with
They're on their
all
own
of
for
the
the
other,
thesis.
that they're very much on their own.
And I don't know if you recall the stats on the thing, but we give them the business plan option or the thesis option. And the last figures I have, we had 2/3 do the business plan and only 1/3 would do the thesis.
Okay.
Not surprised.
The business plan is very prescribed.
Yeah.
It's got 5 or 6 sections, a little bit of writing, but it's all very formatted. They're on the web for free. You can pull the stuff down and they do a bit of market research, and they cope with that. But the sharper student then that wants to do a postgrad is doing the thesis.
And in fact, across the sector, it would seem like there's been pretty much a step away from the longer thesis now, unfortunately, in any faculty, to more an FYP that's limited to 7 or 8 or 10,000 words kind of max.
Yeah, and I
so
wonder is
it's-
that a good thing or a bad thing?
So
I don't fear it's not, but
yeah, you wouldn't know, would you? It's is it dumbing down and saying like our students are no longer actually capable of this autonomous piece of work that's.
I think a lot of it is the application of the individual. I mean, UL, I don't know if there's one here, but there's a writing centre. So a student can opt to go in, get free tuition on how to phrase something, how to put a sentence together. You say to the person in the writing centre, my weakness is, I'm always getting criticised for my grammar, I'm always getting criticised for whatever. And you get an hour at a time with these people, and it's at the moment it's 100% free, and there's very little take up really. There's lots of free spaces in there for people to, and this is peers. These are people. Well, they're postgrads dealing with undergrads, and they're doctorate students dealing with MA students, and it can be quite good. But then again, sometimes I think that maybe the student who's directing is not maybe at the pictures themselves sometimes. Some of the stuff that I get back. But I used to do a bit of it inside there, and funny thing, I didn't have the jargon, for example, for somebody from another discipline. So a guy came in from computer engineering, so I didn't know the jargon. So I said, you're going to have to help me with the jargon, and I'll help you with the grammar. And he had, I didn't realise at the time, he had a writing issue that he told me later, and I said, what are you actually doing? He said, I'm doing TI. And I said, TI? I said, yes, he says, information technology. And then he told me he was dyslexic, of course. I just laughed because it was funny at the time. But there's that issue as well, I suppose. But it can be a helpful environment. But if you go for help, if you seek help like that, it already shows that you have an interest. But a lot of them go to the writing centre and they expect the person in the writing centre to write it for them. That's the problem.
There's kind of like a bridge piece somewhere along the line that's around report writing that takes them from that kind of shorter essay to the skills to lay out a thesis and to kind of know how to use words cleverly, And maybe it's something that I think some of ours get it in the placement reports because it's their first significant report that they've done. Because really, if they understand how to lay out a report and know all the choices that are there for subheadings, etc., and all that, and the bulleting systems, and it's a good preparation for thesis writing.
And I suppose that there's maybe another debate to be had at another time in terms of, you talked about the person doing the postgraduate in the art school that's writing 5,000 words and is still deemed to have achieved the learning outcomes in that space.
They've had to produce a piece.
Yeah, but I suppose, there are so many other ways now that people can capture their knowledge and their learning that maybe the 60,000 word piece could be re-envisaged and revisioned to be 20,000 but plus a film,
an artifact,
or
thesis.
mime
maybe.
No, you can actually in Miri like they have to perform their
But I know
Yeah.
Gary Granville
Okay.
in
Yeah.
NCAD, like he's been on this debate for years about, like in art school, you know,
Right.
why should you be even required to do the 5,000?
Mm.
That your trade is an artist, so you produce, you do installations, so you're doing this process for the external in order to explain to them how you got from,
Yeah.
and that's the requirement. But it's
Yeah.
not authentic to the
To the-
person's own,
Discipline.
and
Yeah.
he's written on this, you know.
But none of us would produce the 20 or 30 unless we have to, and
Oh,
like
yeah.
Word is the bridge, to use your word, to
Yeah,
convey
yeah.
that out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no other animal that I see that
Yeah.
we can adopt to allow us to
Yeah.
portray the knowledge, whatever
Yeah.
that we've accumulated. You know, it
Yeah,
tends
no,
to be a
absolutely.
word.
The learning and the knowledge has to be documented, and
Yeah.
that
Absolutely.
process, and
Process
that
has to be
structure,
documented,
and
that's
like
it, yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah, there's
you
no
know,
other.
and that 2-year postgrad where you've gone through that
So what have you done? Show me.
literature piece, and you've come down and you've.
But your
Well,
Viva Voce, you see, then is the other piece of that, where you are
So
defending
Ireland-
your process and you
Yeah.
are,
Yeah.
you know, how you got from.
yeah.
So it's. Yeah.
But then equally, people are challenged by that process,
Mm.
As well.
the verbalizing or the,
Yeah.
you know. So
Yeah.
there is no.
There's no one best. way.
Ultimately, the work has to be done.
That's
When
right.
they
Yeah.
close,
Yeah.
yes.
And made explicit
Be
for.
explicit for,
And they all
the research
require
question. Yeah.
an output,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, in a structured fashion, whether that's an installation or a science lab experiment or a piece of art or
Yeah.
a piece of something.
Yeah.
So
So Kate,
ma-
you still have to write it yourself.
So that's the message today.
There.
You gotta write it yourself.
And Microsoft have a lot more to do, obviously. in terms
Don't worry about us
of
struggling with Word.
supporting.
There's no app for writing the thesis, is there? No.
But you'd wonder at a kind of a bigger level, and you've touched on that, like, are we nearly at a place where there is a shift in literacy, you know, where that writing literacy is almost like back in the 15th or 16th century, like where we moved from an oral culture to a written culture, but now is it to a technology culture, and that like what we're seeing with students is almost they've been socialized into the push button,
Yeah.
Smartphone.
you know, the smartphone, and that skill of writing that we appreciate and respect so much is has to be undermined a little bit because of the amount of time. Like, some amazing surveys done of the amount of time people are actually spending on using technology devices, as opposed to reading or writing in their whole education process,
Yeah.
and how that has shifted over time.
Yeah.
Literacy has certainly been diluted, yeah.
Mm. And maybe we are just moving towards a whole new literacy that.
Because I mean, I don't, you know, if I look at my children now in school, you know, technology enhanced learning, children are doing a lot more learning outside of the book,
Yeah, absolutely.
and doing pieces of work that are outside of the written word. So in, you know, where they're tech savvy, they're not word savvy, or
So most primary
And
kids have the
so-
smart boards, and they have web
and all that
links,
stuff.
and they can see it.
So they are the digital native, but
Yeah.
again, I think it is a fundamental issue, like where this problem is not going to go away in terms of the literacy and the sentence stuff, like, and that.
No,
Yeah,
and I think we do have an issue with the like the word count jump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a challenge we should look at. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, how we solve it, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not going away anytime soon.
Okay,
Very good.
Thanks very
All right,
much.
thanks, folks.
thank you very much, Derek.
Cheers.
Very much.
Thanks very much.